everyone. Welcome to the 390th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the FTC looking into Amazon's acquisition of iRobot. We're also going to be talking about Wi-Fi sensing finding its way into yet another place. That's pretty cool. We've got a store in Australia that is deploying wireless over-the-air power and Bluetooth trackers. And I am just like, the future's here, right there in Australia. So we'll talk about that. We've got a little update from NVIDIA and surveys. So many surveys are out. One is going to focus on industrial IoT and LoRa, and the other is going to focus on industrial IoT and the skills gap. We're also going to just mention something with helium and TMO, mostly because y'all care about helium and TMO, and some updates from Tile. Then Kevin's going to tell you about his experience with a LoRaWAN dev kit that if you're into LoRaWAN, you're going to want to stick around for. We're also going to hear from our sponsor, Infineon, talking about IoT security, and our guest this week is Ron Davies. He is the head of insurance products at Vivint. He's going to be talking to us about the marriage of smart home, monitored security, and insurance in the wake of, actually, the deal with ADT, Google, and State Farm. We're not going to talk about that particular deal, but we'll get a feel for what those companies might be doing. All of this and more await you. But first, a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs. Works With by Silicon Labs emerged as the go-to developer conference for building the skills everyone needs to create impactful connected devices. And earlier this month, Silicon Labs brought together the most influential tech brands, ecosystem partners, and developers for 3 days of technical training, keynotes, and panels, including one for me. You can access all of that for free and on demand at workswith.scilabs.com if you happen to miss it. Okay. Kevin, big news. The FTC has decided, you know what? We got some questions about this $1.7 billion deal where Amazon said, you know what? We're going to acquire iRobot, the makers of Roomba.
They're not the only ones with questions.
Yeah. You know, when they announced this last month, I was like, I didn't love it. And I didn't love it for antitrust reasons, or I hoped they could make an antitrust case about it. People were focused on privacy. They were like, you know, Roomba knows a lot about what's in my home. I feel like Amazon knows a lot about what's in my home, so I'm less worried about that. But what I was worried about is Roomba was building an operating system for the smart home called Robot OS. And I really liked that Roomba was, if they were going to build this Robot OS, they were going to have to really work well with both consumers and with smaller players in the market. They were going to have to really come up with a way to like make an intuitive smart home that worked for everyone. With Amazon behind the scenes and acquiring iRobot in this technology, Amazon can just dictate how it wants it to work because it's the like 900-pound gorilla. And that's where I think the antitrust angle here is.
I actually agree with you. I could care less about the mapping and what the Roomba knows, and that information then goes to Amazon as part of this potential deal. My fear is that the FTC will not look at the Robot OS aspect and as a result, you know, just make the decisions based, you know, on other things. Whereas it should be very much a big part of this because wasn't Robot OS going to be more like the ambient home platform?
Yes, it was. It was going to pull together all kinds of sensors and data. And I was really excited about it. But
I don't know the people that are going to be reviewing this as part of the FTC. I certainly hope that this aspect in particular comes up, because if it doesn't, they're overlooking, in my opinion, a huge red flag.
The FTC was always going to have to review this deal unless it passed on it. But sources inside the FTC told Politico at the beginning of this month that they were looking at both the competition and is it going to boost Amazon's market share in the connected device market and in the retail market generally. They're looking at how the purchase is going to add to Amazon's smart device lineup. So there could be a competitive angle there. And it also wants to know whether the data generated by the Roomba is going to give Amazon an unfair advantage over other retailers. Again, I don't know if it's the data that we should look at so much as the power that Amazon has to dictate terms. And some of the terms that I'm worried about are things like, hey, if you're a lock maker and you don't want to give Amazon like your state information, you shouldn't have to. Because in some cases, Amazon asks for data from companies that work within the Amazon smart home ecosystem that works with Madam A program. They actually ask for data even when that data is not being sent or demanded through Madam A. So if I ask Madam A to turn on my lights, it makes sense that Amazon would need to know the status of my lights. But Amazon also asks for the status of the lights when I turn it on from the switch. And not simply just because, like, it needs to know if they're on or off. It's looking for when that was pressed, what turned on,
patterns,
what device.
Trends.
Yeah. So all of that data goes into Amazon, and a company that doesn't want to give that data to Amazon then can't work with Madam A, and that's a big competitive problem. So those are specifically some of the things I'm worried about with the creation of a smart home OS.
In terms of competition, if you get rid of Amazon's, big player status, there are plenty of vendors that make smart robots. So I don't think that's gonna, hopefully they don't focus on that too much, because it's pretty obvious, I think, that there's plenty of choice there, right? And to be honest, all the data that is captured by those robots is more than likely a superset or a subset of the same data that the Roombas capture. The point you make about getting pretty much all the possible data is definitely worth looking at, as is the platform itself that we talked about earlier. So, I just hope they look at the right things, and I'm crossing the fingers here, but I don't know.
I don't either. I
wonder, do you think they'll have hearings that we'll get to see?
That feels like a lot. I don't think so.
It does. I mean, but I for one would actually like to see that. I'm probably the only one. Maybe you would too, Stacey, but because I want to see what questions they're asking about what specific aspects they're worried about, because I think we've just kind of poo-pooed some of the more obvious ones that they probably will focus on, right?
Well, you know what? If they have those hearings, I'm assigning you to cover it. There you go.
I actually will. I don't like those assignments typically, but this one I will take. I will take that one with glee.
Glee. All right. Speaking of glee, I am excited. Okay.
She's gleeful.
I am gleeful about this. Signify, the company behind the Philips Hue brand and its cheaper lighting line, Wiz, they are actually going to introduce something called Spacesense. And Spacesense uses Wi-Fi sensing technology to detect changes in the Wi-Fi signal as people move in and out of a room, and big gestures, not small gestures. And they're going to use that to turn your light bulbs into motion sensors. And I'm really excited, obviously, because I've been saying this was going to happen for a long time. There are different resolutions at how this can happen. So it's a little unclear, like, if this is going to be gesture or if this is just going to be like, hey, people are coming into the room. It's something that's going to be coming, but it is not out yet. It will work on Wiz branded products that have been released since September 2021. So if you bought Wiz branded lights in the last year or so, this is going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to come to current Philips Hue bulbs because they don't use Wi-Fi.
Right.
So Wiz uses Wi-Fi. Those bulbs are actually relatively cheap compared to the Hue bulbs by the same company. They're like $11 a bulb. So, you're getting a nice feature ad for not that much money, in my opinion.
And the new Wiz stuff will be Matter compatible, because I know we're all talking about that. So that's good to know too.
Yeah, users will have the ability in the updated Wiz app, which is coming later this month, to adjust sensitivity of motion detection, and also you'll be able to set a delay. So that way, even if there's no motion for however long, 30 minutes or whatever, because maybe you're just sitting in a chair reading, who knows, you'll be able to do that as well. So it's basic functionality, but it's useful.
It is. And I have played with a lot of PIR sensors for lighting. I've played with a lot of lighting things that I've really wanted to make work.
I can vouch for that. She plays with a lot of these.
I love lights. I love
she
lights.
uses lights in the daytime just because of these features.
What can I say? Yeah. So yeah, I'm hopeful that this will be fun, and we'll test it out.
What's exciting here is not the fact that they can detect motion. It's a different approach to detecting motion and using smarts. And it's the Wi-Fi sensing. That's really the cool part here.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to send, you know what, Kevin? I'm going to send some of these out to you, and you're going to play with this and see what you think.
Kevin's getting all the assignments on the show. I just want everybody to know.
Maybe I'll take one every, Yeah. Yeah. I'm lazy. What can I say? I'm trapped.
No. I'm curious to see how well it works because, again, it is a new type of use for an existing radio technology.
Yeah. And we've seen it before. Like, I think I first saw this, there's a company called, it was called Cognitive Systems, and it is still called Cognitive Systems, but they made something called the Aura home security system, and they used Wi-Fi sensing to detect motion and then alert people in the home. They showed that at CES in like 2017, maybe, and it was pretty cool, but not awesome. And then it got better, and Cognitive now puts that technology inside other Wi-Fi products. So we're seeing it come out in routers. I think we're going to see it in smart TVs, maybe. But yeah, so it's just a nice way to instead of buying an additional PIR sensor, you're just using something you already have and just doing basically checking disturbances in the frequency. So it's math.
I'm also curious to see or try this because back in 2019, I used a Bluetooth type solution to this problem called RoomMe. And yeah, when I would walk into range of a room where I had a RoomMe sensor, the lights could turn on or turn off. It wasn't as rock solid as I thought it should be. So I'm curious what this will do instead.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about your RoomMe trials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And tribulations. That's all we'll say.
And tribulations. Okay. Let's talk about cool stuff also in wireless. It's not really wireless sensing. This is wireless power delivery. So I've had some guests on the show, and we've talked about how wireless power delivery has gotten a big boost in the last year because the FCC has approved several wireless power delivery systems. So this is companies that make some sort of puck that has a chip in it, and that chip then communicates with a chip inside a device to power it over the air. So this is not like, Qi power where you stick your phone on something. It's not inductive. It's over the air. And these are not going to power your phone in like 5 seconds, right? They're
not going to power your phone at all.
They're not, yes. Well, there's actually some that are being looked at to power.
Yes.
But yes. These are delivered like between 5 watts. Some might do 20 watts. For the most part, these are very low power. They're designed to charge maybe wearables. And in this case, a company called Energis, they're one of the companies in this sector, they deployed their Watt Up Power Bridge inside a store in Australia. It is Academy brand, which is the name of the store. They put their bridge in there, and then they created a package with Wiliot Bluetooth tags. And the Wiliot tags are charged by the Energis puck, and they can be used to actively track things like inventory and purchases. So any Wiliot tag that's on a piece of merchandise, or I guess they don't power. I was like, you could even use this to possibly charge an e-ink screen for displaying dynamic pricing. I don't know. But basically it's letting the store, Academy, understand where their stuff is in the store and how people are behaving with it. And I love it because this is an excellent IoT use case. This is when I talk to people about IoT and retail, people want this, but it's A, really expensive, and B, there's a lot of batteries and a lot of overhead associated with it. To get rid of batteries, and then the Wiliot tags are pretty inexpensive. That's going to be
they're small and inexpensive. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be really game changing, I think. So
they didn't mention this in the press release, but I could certainly see a use case where, as a customer, you could just scan either or use Bluetooth to check out with the items that you have, and they've got the tags on them, so it knows which ones you're getting, and you pay and walk out and you're done, and no wires, no batteries, no cameras, nothing.
Yes, the no cameras is key.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, just really excited about it. Also, because we're talking about this now, and we're going to talk about dev kits later, Energous has several evaluation or dev kits that contain their pucks and a variety of sensors. So they have one with Wiliot. They have one with a company called EPs. That's just a different energy harvesting technology board. So, if you're interested in this, check it out, man. I think it's so cool.
And it was a couple shows ago when we were talking about CES and the Wireless Power Consortium and Qi and this will be the year where we'll have wireless energy, blah, blah, blah. I say we've been saying that for as long as we've been going to CES, for 12 years or however long it's been. But this is real, and this is a good use case. And it actually is kind of exciting. And maybe it's not, okay, you're not charging your smartphones or doing other things, but it's a totally different industry where it makes more sense and it does work.
Yeah. Like, not everything's about us, y'all. I know it's hard.
Well,
as a consumer,
yeah.
I'm like, oh man, oh well.
I still think it is, but all right.
Okay. And in other retail news, we just threw this in here because NVIDIA did an event and talked about their Omniverse, which is their metaverse platform. They announced some new focus areas, including bringing digital twins to Lowe's. So Lowe's is now using Omniverse to design, build, and operate digital twins of their stores to quote unquote optimize operations and enhance the shopping experience. This probably isn't going to be you and I wandering the halls of Lowe's in the metaverse, although that theoretically could happen one day. The more interesting use cases are things, again, related to inventory, stocking, even maybe it would be cool, like if you could look at some of that and get information about how to use a device or tool.
I just want something that pops up directions to where I need to get to in Lowe's.
Oh my gosh, yes. Godly.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. However, I do think it's kind of cool. And I visit my local Lowe's pretty frequently because for me to do one project takes 10 trips to Lowe's. And apparently the associates at Lowe's that have stores, that have implemented the Omniverse, they'll have augmented reality headsets to see what's on shelves and inventory levels. And honestly, I would just like to see somebody in Lowe's wearing one of those. And I'm going to see if I can grab it and take a peek, but makes sense.
Again, I don't know if heads-up displays are really necessary for, retail people in most situations. It makes sense for factory workers that have their hands busy, but sure, whatever.
Honestly, I mean, how many times you go to a retail store and you don't find what you want on the shelf and somebody's got to go find a terminal. First of all, you have to find somebody. Then they got to find an open terminal. Then they got to go log into the system and then see, do we have any more in the back or whatever? Or I'll check if they're in the back and they disappear, have a Coke out back and come back and say, sorry. If they could do that at the point of sale, or if I could do that at the point of sale, I mean.
Yeah, Kevin's like, I could do that when I walk in. Scanning.
It'd be like a Cylon, yes.
Yeah.
So say we all.
It's like, except not as deadly to humanity. Okay, moving on from Cylons.
I would be a nice Cylon. Come on. I'll be number 12.
No. All right, moving on to surveys, IoT surveys, because we got a couple this week. We're not even getting into the security ones. We're going to just do Machine Q. This is a Comcast LoRaWAN network provider. They put out a report in conjunction with Omdia talking about industrial IoT and ROI. 30% of people who deploy industrial IoT or IoT projects in their enterprise and industrial settings, they would like a return on investment between 6 months and a year. That seems really fast.
Good luck with that.
14% want it almost immediately, and 26% want it within 6 months. So people are not patient. That's the first thing I learned. There are a surprising number of people who are still exploring the IoT. 16% are in the exploration state right now. 15% are planning. Another 15% are in trials. So that's like almost half of the people they surveyed still aren't doing much with IoT.
These are the people that in 1995 heard the internet was going to be a big thing. And they're like, nah. They're doing it again with IoT, I think.
This was interesting. They asked at what stage your company is in its IoT development, and about half of them had more than 50,000 IoT devices, which I was like, good on you.
Yeah.
That's a lot of devices to manage. And their biggest roadblocks are deployment takes longer than expected at 49%. Supply chain challenges, that's been a big one this last 2 years. That was at 48%. 39% said they didn't have enough in-house expertise. And I think you're going to see that again in the skills gap survey we're going to talk about next. And a fifth of them said there are just too many partners, which I'm like, yes, please.
That's fair. I mean, we've seen consolidation over the last year or two, but there's still so many choices for so many services, platforms, cloud providers, and devices. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And boy, people know this stuff is going to break. And so they really want people to help them with it. They want customer support reps. They want same-day fixes. They want 24/7, 365 customer support. That is all very important.
So needy.
So there's definitely a recognition that this is hard.
Yeah.
And then for everybody, this is Machine Q, so take this with a grain of salt. But basically, they asked what technologies that are people using. Most of them are using cellular, believe it or not. But they expect the use of cellular to go down just a little bit by 6% in the next 2 years. They expect that LPWANs, which are not as much in use as cellular, to increase, though, by 45%. And topping all of these right now is the local area network. So Wi-Fi or just PoE even. That's the number one use of connectivity today. And
anything unlicensed and free.
Yeah, if it's free, it's going to work. All right, moving on to skills gaps. Hitachi Vantara. That's Hitachi's IoT something. They consulting / systems integration / edge computing. They just do a lot. It's a lot. They released a report this week, and they worked with 451 Research Group. And this one was all about why people aren't succeeding so far at their digital transformation. And skills were a big part of it. And more than half of the companies said they don't have the skills in key areas to actually deploy stuff. And those key areas included data science, IoT deployment and development. And this one's pretty new, robotics deployment and operation. So that was 60%. They were like, we got nobody on robots. And I didn't realize that we were now really big on robots, but we are. Given the skills technology gap, at least 37% of the respondents said they had no plans to implement any IoT-led initiatives, which, again, makes sense.
I get it. I mean, they've got other technological priorities just to keep their business afloat or growing or what have you. So I get it. It's a fast-growing industry, but maybe more fast on the deliverables side, less so on the planning, strategies, implementation, and development side, right? You need slightly different skills to deploy these things. You need people with those skills. And, I haven't looked at the job boards, but I'll bet you they're filled with things to fill openings like this.
Yeah. And another noteworthy thing, because probably the last, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years, the number one issue that stopped people from deploying IoT stuff was they were worried about cybersecurity. It was usually in the number 1 or number 2. Now, based on this report and some other reports, more than 3/4 of the respondents are confident in their company's skills for IT and OT security, which I thought was a big leap and interesting because 80% of the respondents have had a ransomware attack at their company.
It is good. I would caution all of those respondents not to be overconfident. But it is good. It is good. I mean, digital security is digital security for the most part. Yeah, there might be different systems or threat vectors and whatnot, but that's not a new thing. And that's why over time, they've increased their confidence levels. I think their people have built up the skills. There are plenty of tools available. It's a mature industry.
And, possibly after living through a ransomware attack, you're like, oh, okay, well, I recovered and now I know how my systems are going to fare and what kind of things that I need to do to make it better. Part of it might just be knowing once you've been attacked, you're like, oh, okay, well, I survived that. Here's what I'm going to do.
Once you know, you know.
Exactly. It's the known. knowns.
Yep.
Not the unknowns.
Like robots.
Like robots. All right. I'm just going to mention this because we talk about it a lot. Helium, which is a company that's building a LoRaWAN-based IoT network. It's actually LongFi, their own technology, but it works with LoRaWAN. It's a decentralized network that is incentivized. People are incentivized to participate using using tokens. They're cryptocurrency tokens called Helium Network tokens. I am a member. Kevin's a member. We did it because we care about IoT networks. I also made some money. It was exciting. People are not making money anymore. Really,
it's not exciting for me.
It's less exciting.
From a money standpoint, but I don't care about that. That's fine.
But last year, I was like, what year are we in still? In 2021, Helium said, hey, you know what? We're going to work on 5G as well as LoRa. And they did. They worked with a company called FreedomFi to start building out decentralized 5G hotspots. And
not for IoT.
Not for IoT. This is for 5G for mobile phones. And Nova Labs, the company that developed and is kind of behind the Helium network, they said this week that they have worked out an MVNO agreement with T-Mobile. So they're going to let you as a customer, or I as a T-Mobile customer, can access either the T-Mobile 5G network, but I could also access the Helium branded 4G network that Nova is working to build.
Yeah. So if you, like, I'm a T-Mobile customer and I can appreciate this if I'm in an area that doesn't have T-Mobile cellular coverage, but I can pick up coverage through Helium. I just roam and I'm good. I don't run into many coverage issues with T-Mobile. It's actually really, the map is pretty broad for their coverage these days, but I could see the benefit to people who live in, places that are in fringe areas and such.
They have a wireless network for 5G and 4G LTE that is about 4,500 cell sites.
Which is nothing.
No, it is very little.
They're in the growth phase, just like they were with the Helium IoT network, which now there's massive amounts of coverage, especially around urban areas. It took several years for people to deploy those hotspots. It's going to take time for these 5G hotspots to be deployed because they're not cheap. We talked about this on the show. You can spend thousands of dollars. So they've got to get companies or somebody to start buying into those hotspots.
Yeah. Well, and using the data.
Yeah.
All right. Another little story for you. Tile now has QR labels for lost items. So this is not a Bluetooth thing. This is literally buying a sheet of QR codes that you will then stick on your things, and then you will basically put your contact information in the Tile app. You will scan the QR code. You will say, I am Stacy. You can reach me at blah, 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 blah if you find this. And then if someone finds my thing with this QR code, they can scan it. They will get that information.
I mean, I guess there's a market for this.
It's basically like if lost call or this jacket belongs to
That's exactly what it is. It's
Ricky.
a fancy sticker that says, hey, please return this to the owner, scan this QR code, and contact me. Yeah. $15 for 15 stickers.
It's $1 a sticker. It feels expensive, but you could make your own QR code, and then you could pay to have your QR code service keep your QR code alive for as long as you need it to. I mean, because that's not always free. Or you could just buy this and make it really easy.
Again, it's not an IoT kind of thing, but it is interesting to see a IoT type company trying to diversify their product line and expand their revenue stream here. I don't want to say they've gone as far as they can, but they're up against Apple AirTags and Samsung tags, and so the Bluetooth, UWB stuff, it's already getting saturated and hard to compete against. So I think it's a smart idea from a business standpoint. Yeah,
I mean, sure. And now back to LoRaWAN, because Kevin, you played with something pretty cool. Tell us about it.
I did. I got a Sparrow development kit from Blues Wireless, and I'm going to say right up front to Stacy, thank you for getting them to send this to me. It's $199 if you want to buy it, but they did send over a review unit. And ironically, you just tweeted the story, and Ray Ozzie liked it, and he's now following me. And Ray Ozzie is the owner of Blues
He's one
Wireless?
of the co-founders of Blues, yes. And he's also, for those of us who have been in this, for those of us who are old, he's also
like
the founder of Lotus Notes and...
Yeah. I use Lotus Notes,
He
right?
I don't know. He's a big deal in the computing
Yeah,
world.
he's still a big deal. So thank you for that. So the kit itself, it's for prototyping. This is not something that you as a consumer would buy to like build your own little LoRa network of devices. You could do it, but it's not what it's intended for. It's intended for companies who want to build a LoRa sensor or product, but don't want to mess with the LoRa stuff, right? Blues Wireless in this kit, they've taken all the heavy lifting out of that aspect so that you can focus on building your product, getting your data from your sensors up to the cloud and doing whatever it is you want to do. So to that end, I wholeheartedly think they deliver on that promise because it took me 15 minutes to set this hardware up. And by hardware, I mean one board that's a gateway, a note card that you attach to the gateway, and that note card contains a radio. In the dev kit, it's a Wi-Fi radio. So if you want to do something with some longer distance with LoRa, you're going to want to have Cat 1M. They have a multiple array of note cards, and those range from $49 to $69. They include 10 years of service and up to 500 megabytes of data. No, that may not sound like a lot if you're thinking consumer, but you're really passing little itty bits of data, not massive amounts, which I'll get into in a minute. They have 3 LoRa boards, so that way you can deploy sensors attached to those boards anywhere within range of the gateway, which within range for this, because these are small boards, best case is like a kilometer. I went and extended these sensors beyond my wireless network. So like 150 feet behind my house, for example, includes 2 prototype sensor kits that basically already have boards in them with LoRa radios. They can measure barometric pressure, temperature, humidity. I believe there's a PIR motion sensor in there as well. You also get any cables and batteries needed to create your little project. So you're getting a bunch of little bits of hardware. And again, 15 minutes to connect all the hardware, go online, set up a project on their developer dashboard. And that was it. These sensors just started communicating once I paired them. You press a button to pair them like you would press, pair anything. And all of a sudden I'm getting like all that sensor data on my dashboard. So very cool stuff. After that, it's up to you to do whatever you want. And I decided, because I could connect this to Twilio and get notifications if the temperature hit a certain point, for example, or I could hook this up to feed the data into Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, whatever I wanted to slice and dice it. I decided, because I'm studying web development and JavaScript, that since the data is being sent over the LoRaWAN network to the gateway in JSON format, which is basically the language of web data, that I was just going to whip up a quick little web page and use some JavaScript to visualize the data. And that was far harder than setting up the hardware, but I got it working. It was easy for me to do. Granted, I'm studying JavaScript. You might pass it off to a data engineer who then does all the visualizations or whatever, but it was easy for me to do, and it works really well. They're still collecting data. They're battery powered. They're only passing like kilobytes of data.
Blues' value proposition is that you buy these cards from them and you get a set amount of data for a set cost. So it's wonderful if you're like, hey, I want to build a sensor. You can build your connectivity costs in with your BOM and you don't have to worry about like a subscription, basically. So that's
you said BOM. Bill of materials.
Your bill of materials. I'm sorry.
No, I know what it is. I just don't want the
shake a bomb, shake a bomb. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Stacy, moving
right. Think about that for a second. If you don't know anything about, say, LoRa networking and provisioning devices, or you don't want to be bothered with that, this kit takes all that away. You literally, it's all built in. The LoRa radios are built in. The data's built in. You can pair up to 15 of these LoRa boards to one gateway. You're getting 2 sensors with boards and 3 more boards that are LoRa enabled. You can attach your own sensors.
I was about to say, and tons of pins, so you can attach more
sensors. You get 20 I/O pins on every board, and so like I did this as a prototype just to see basically to see if Blues Wireless is delivering on the promise of we take care of the connectivity, you just do your project, and it wholeheartedly does, absolutely. But now that I've done it, now I want to like start adding sensors to those other 3 LoRa boards, and what else can I do here? And what else can I do with the data? So even though I've reviewed this and I think it's ideal for prototyping in this particular use case, I still will continue to play with it because there's so much you can do with it. Because again, I don't have to worry about all the LoRa stuff. It just works.
Yeah. Send Kevin your ideas. You're like, hey, Kevin, here's what you should do with this. I'll keep my eyes open too.
More assignments. Yay.
In this show, we have given Kevin 3 assignments. One's theoretical, only if there are hearings. And you volunteered. So
this is true.
All right. Now it is that time where we go to you, our listeners. That's right. It's the Internet of Things podcast Hotline, which is sponsored by Silicon Labs and their Works With event that was held earlier this month. If you missed it, that is a darn shame because there was lots of good stuff. So, including my panel all about Matter. So if you did miss it, check it out at workswith.scilabs.com.
They have recordings for everything, right?
Yeah, they have recordings for not everything, but lots of things.
Well, they have recordings, I think, of your
They
Matter
totally
panel,
have. Yeah,
and that's really the only one that counts.
It's really the most important one. Yes. No, they have conversations with folks on Amazon Sidewalk. They've got some folks from Madam A. There's lots of good stuff in there. Now, if you would like to be featured on the show and have us answer your question live, you should give us a call at the IoT Podcast Hotline at 512-623-7424. Or, as in you'll see this week, you can send us an email. If you do any of these things, you will be entered to win this month's drawing, which is a Hue tap dial switch and super fun device. And at the end of the month, we draw a winner. Then I ship it out to them. So right now, you should give us a call because your odds are really good. The odds are ever in your favor. 512-623-7424. This week's question is actually from an email. And it's an email from Christopher, and he says, I know you've mentioned something about water sensors before that might alert you to a burst pipe and maybe even an automated water shutoff. Not sure if there's any innovations in that area, but since we've experienced 2 flooding events in our basement, I'd like to know of the options available for water detection or shutoff. The first event was a corroded hot water heater pipe that burst. The second event was a faulty backflow valve that stopped all water from draining out to city main lines. Please let me know and keep up the good work on the show. Okay.
Those are 2 big problems that hopefully can be avoided by some of the options that we have.
Yeah. I don't know about the faulty backflow valve.
That's a tricky one right there.
There's 2 ways to solve this problem. One is you can put leak detection sensors around your home. You can scatter them around. The downside to that is it will detect certain types of leaks, but it will not detect things like slow leaks. And if you have a leak in a place that the sensor is not, you're out of luck.
Right. You'd have to deploy these under every single water supply or drain because they only cover where you put them.
Right. And some of them will have a sensor and then they'll have a cord, and the cord will also detect. So that gives you a little bit more coverage area, but it's still not like that only gives you that limited coverage area. The other option are devices like the Mow and Flow or the Fin, or they're actually a bunch now. And these
The
Bulldog. These are devices that you attach to a pipe in your home, and they will detect the water flows. And they're basically using, they're measuring water flowing through the pipe, and then they're using machine learning to figure out if you've got a slow leak in some part of your hair, like seeing if things are changing. So I run something called the Fin in my house, and it's actually really good at what it does. But there's another element to this. In either of those 2 systems, either the AI pipe monitoring system or the actual water detection system, you have the option of adding an automatic shutoff valve. And these are devices, some of them have to be installed by a plumber. Most of them do. There's a couple that you could DIY if you're really feeling confident. And these will, if they detect a problem, they will automatically shut off your water at the shutoff point.
Which to me is far better than a notification, because if you're not at home, the notification doesn't do you any good.
Right. Especially in like one of these emergency cases.
Yes.
First pipe, you just kill it. So that's kind of what these systems look like today. And there are lots. Originally, it was the Flow was one of the first, and the Fin was one of the first. And then there was a company called Buoy that came out, and they were purchased by Honeywell / Residio. Now there are a lot. Like Grow, which makes faucets and things, makes ones. There's a company called Bulldog. They make a automatic shutoff valve. Dome makes a shutoff valve that will tie into like leak detection sensors. So you have to figure out, and all of these options are going to cost you, like a water detection sensor is going to cost between $30 and $70, depending on what kind of radio is in it, if there's the cord or not, brand. And then you've also got with the monitoring the pipes, those kinds are usually about $300 to $400. And then if you add the shutoff, the total system could be like $600 to $700.
And that might sound like a big price difference, but to be honest, if you're going to buy a ton of water leak detection sensors, the price is going to add up probably to the same amount anyway, and you're still not going to have shutoff valves.
Yeah, and you're going to have to, you're not going to have a shutoff valve. You're going to have to program those sensors to actually talk to a shutoff valve if you get one. Batteries.
So it really depends on what you want out of the system. Do you want to just know when there's a problem, and that problem has to be in a place where you have coverage with leak detection sensors? Or do you want a whole home system that potentially can also shut the water off without any intervention on your part? To me, that's the main decision you need to make.
Yeah. And I'd like to see like your insurance company start paying or giving you a discount for these.
Yeah.
I mean, the fin is really great. It does tell me, like, I had, I guess, a ball flap in my toilet went and I didn't know, but it realized it. It was like, hey, you got your toilet's leaking. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. That was super helpful. And we actually, I forgot to turn off my sprinkler one day and it notified me that that was happening. So again, super helpful. That was more on wasting water and less on like actual leaks, but still helpful. So hopefully this helps. We've listed a couple of the companies that make these things. You can find a lot of options out there. Let us know what you choose. And thanks for giving us a call. If you would like us to answer your questions, give us a call at 512-623-7424. And now it's time for our guest, Ron Davies, who is the Chief Insurance Officer at Vivint. But first, a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Infineon. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. And this week's sponsor is Infineon. And I have Amit Rayleigh, who is the Senior Director of Product at Infineon. So Amit, we are moving to connect everything. And I have to ask, what are the security challenges that arise from that?
That's a really good question. The big question that has to do is how do you get a unique device identity onto devices, especially targeted into more sensitive parts of your network, like, for example, in industrial IoT or in the medical field or in that segment. The solution is typically putting in a public-private key onto your device and making sure that that's the birth certificate that's assigned to it throughout that product's lifecycle. The way Infineon has solved this problem is by injecting either a secure element or MCU with a public-private key right at the fab. Cloud ID, which is an Infineon cloud, gets a copy of the public key and uses public APIs to inject it into your product cloud on either Azure or AWS or wherever that happens to be. What this means is that using that certificate, we can register your device into your product cloud and create a device twin using these same APIs. This matters for security because there's fewer actors involved. The only actors involved are Infineon, the fab company that you're building the semiconductor with, and the OEM product company. You don't have system integrators, you don't have contract manufacturers, or any other actors playing and handling your public-private keys.
Okay, so what are some of the security threats that are driving this change?
The security threats that we've seen are, in order to create secure devices, you literally have to create a secure manufacturing facility, and that makes it harder and more expensive to maintain over time. Having the identity in a secure element removes all of that complexity and cost.
And how do y'all support this today?
Well, we've got two products out in the market today. One of them is the Optega Trustem Express, which is a secure element that you can plop onto your board and use it directly from there. The other product is a product called the Cloud Connectivity Manager, which we brought to market together with AWS ExpressLink, which is a module that connects directly from your product directly into AWS and can be used by any product company who doesn't want to invest in building Wi-Fi connected products and RF and all that messy stuff and maintaining. And we will take care of all of that stuff for you.
Where are we heading with this?
Well, this is just one example of how silicon companies like Infineon are bringing software and marrying it together with the hardware. Typically, this is something that an OEM company had to do and build and maintain, and it was undifferentiated stuff. It was stuff that you just had to do. But this is one of the ways that Infineon is moving up the stack and making this as a ready-to-use solution for our customers.
Excellent. And where can we go to find out more about Infineon's efforts here?
To get more information about this, you can go to infineon.com/cloudid.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Ron Davies, who is the Chief Insurance Officer at Vivint. Hello, Ron. How are you today?
Hi, Stacey. Great to talk to you this morning, and thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I have been waiting for insurance companies to get more involved with the smart home since probably about 2014 when I realized, gosh, these devices are so expensive and the benefit that accrues to customers, like individual homeowners, may not be worth it. But the benefit that could accrue to insurance companies, like for leak sensing or even like security cameras detecting something right away, smart smoke alarms, that all feels like it would be amazing for y'all to help subsidize it. So I was really excited to see when you joined Vivint back in March. Can you tell me why you joined Vivint from Safe Auto?
Sure, Stacey. Thanks. And again, thanks for having me. So yeah, we sold Safe Auto, got acquired by Allstate last October 2021. And I left and I started to explore what I thought might be interesting opportunities in the industry, problems to solve. And one of the things, I've worked on over my career is the intersection of, technology and data and insurance. And I came across Vivint during that process, and I was, super excited to get to know them. I had not been aware of Vivint before, but they've been going down an insurance journey for the last 2 or 3 years for sure. Starting up a couple of entities, getting tests and learning. And so it felt like a great place to try to do together what I was thinking was in this space to happen. Vivint is such a capable company with the devices and the systems and data that we have that we can kind of make these smart homes much smarter together in conjunction also within insurance and really trying to reduce loss costs, which is doesn't maybe get talked about as much in terms of kind of how cool and sexy it is. But if we can reduce damages by preemption detection, then we can lower costs out of pockets for deductibles as well as insurance costs, which ultimately leads to kind of hopefully lower insurance premiums, which everybody wants to talk about.
That's true. At Vivint, you said they've been on this journey for a while. Does Vivint offer any kind of insurance products today? I know it's very common for an insurer, for example, to offer 5% off your premiums if you have a security alarm in your home. So I feel like that's how I associate Vivint with insurance companies, but it sounds like there's been more in kind of recent years.
There has been, and we're on a journey. So, several years ago, Vivint had this concept, hey, we can improve consumers' lives and benefits with their homes being smarter, and decided that insurance created that kind of adjacency that we could work in. And so it started an agency. And so an agency, which is licensed in 50 states and the District of Columbia, represents a number of carriers. And so we sell other people's products, so to speak. We have the variety of major consumer brands that we can sell. And when we do that, many of them offer initial smart home discounts without perhaps going into details of monitoring and stuff like that. They'll offer discounts on the premise that you'll have less damage, less risk over time. That journey, though, continues as we start to think about insurance of how we create more innovation in this space with insights that we have with Vivint's capabilities, systems, operating software, data collection, that we can then build perhaps new things, new products, designs, pricing for homeowners insurance, which we then have to work with some partners to make happen and offer to our customers.
Okay. And I feel like there's two distinctions that are worth making here. And one is the advantages that like connected tech itself might offer to insurance companies and the data and what else that might offer. And that's kind of a secondary advantage. So can you talk about the first and then we'll move on to the second? So what can you do with connected technology in the home that would help reduce claims or make an insurer just happy to be alive?
The idea of smart homes that's been emerging with devices and technology in the home starts to tell you how do you identify early chances of loss. So water leaks are the number one cause of loss. Non-weather water is the number one cause of loss in homeowners insurance. And so the sooner you can detect a leak and prevent damage, we can, we'll just say reduce the pain and suffering that a homeowner has. I've had a water leak. In the fixing a floor after a bit of water, it is hard, right? So just the thought of if you have a sensor that is monitored that can quickly and early pick up an increased moisture content, not even because you're not going to see water dripping across the floor. It's just increased moisture content. Then you could potentially trigger on that and get eyes on it, right? So we can quickly notify our consumer that, hey, you might have a water leak, or a moisture leak or something. And that catch can be worth thousands of dollars to the homeowner and also to the carrier. So we can make everybody happy in that space. So, time has been developing with, water sensors, smoke, CO2 and smart systems. The more those things have developed capabilities and technology and kind of interconnectedness, starts to feed that ecosystem that kind of benefits consumers and what they're trying to accomplish with kind of taking risk off their plate by early identification.
I'm a fan. So now let's move to data, because in addition to saying, hey, you have a water leak, these devices in our home are also understanding like patterns of behavior. And I know that you mentioned like an occupancy algorithm. So can you talk about knowing when something's going wrong? What else can you determine from connected devices and the data that they throw out?
Yeah. So as you think about our data capabilities, like building out an occupancy model, which is a form of artificial intelligence, it's trying to determine the state of the house. And if the consumers want us, we can then interact with them in their home with regards to things like thermostats, right? So if you're, asleep at night in the house, that's different than perhaps being gone for, out of the house that same night. You might let the temperature in your house go down even further in the winter when you're away from the home for a night versus when you're sleeping in your bed, right? So, you start to think about how these systems interact with thermostats, heating, cooling, and you start to think about the opportunities to save money from this kind of algorithm. And then you start thinking about what other things you might look to try to detect and protect. And so that's the kind of the cool things we start to think about is what do consumers want to be able to do? How would we think about enabling that with these devices such that consumers can get more from their homes while using our devices and in part that then obviously bleeds into insurance.
What do some of these plans look like? Like, what can you do? I know with like auto insurance, it's been very clear that you could do like pay per mile driving insurance, right? Or lowering or raising insurance rates based on how someone drives in real time, which seems exciting. What kind of new products can come out of this data and deeper understanding of what's happening in the home?
That's a wide open opportunity, I think. Obviously, we're publicly traded, so I can't go, out in front of where we are in terms of communicating stuff. But, you bring up auto insurance. So it's a great comparable to think about with telematics, which is the device or the app that enables auto insurance carriers to offer kind of price by mile or usage-based insurance. And so, what we're looking at is kind of that same thing. It's usage-based insurance in the home, right? And part of that then is to identify those risks that you might create. So it's a very good comparable. So thank you for bringing up telematics. So the more we can understand your use of the home, perhaps the better we can customize the home around you with regards to the capabilities of our devices, interactions with our data algorithms and insurance.
The insurance companies have probably learned a lot from telematics. There are obviously some people who are like, I am a terrible driver. I should never sign up for anything that makes pricing decisions based on how I drive. So in the home, if I look at things like some things that I think might be valuable is, hey, do they turn their security system on at night? Do they have a water shutoff valve tied to a leak detection system? Can you talk about some of the habits or things that are backed by data that might be useful or good habits for homeowners to have anyway?
Yeah. So if you think about the devices we have and kind of back up a bit, Vivint has about 1.9 million homes. It's got an average of 15 devices per home. It's feeding us, 1,000 or so or some kind of items per house per day. And that capability is, you just do the math, like how many, that's like, 20, 26, 28 million devices that are feeding us information. And so from that, it starts to create kind of a fingerprint, so to speak, of you and your home and how you live, right? Again, it's customized for you and based on the permissions that you want to give us. But we can start to say, hey, Stacy normally locks her doors at 10. I don't know if we do this or not, but we could, right? So, and they're not locked and it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock. So maybe you have forgotten. So we can, ping you through our app. I think there's like 11 interactions per day on our app per our customer. So I think about the interactions of a customer. We can send you through the app, hey, your doors aren't locked. And then we can lock them for you, kind of thing. So we think about those capabilities. We think about, like, in a sense, geofencing the home. So we potentially can understand when your car's in the driveway or, parked next to it, or it's another car. And what that, might mean, I don't know, but you start to think about, like, yep, you're home, that's your car, or you're not home, and that's not your car. I don't know what we would do with that, right? But you start to say, we could ping you and say, hey, there's a car we've never seen before at your home. Things you might think about in terms of, increasing protection around that property, the home, inside the home, outside the home.
And that's a really good point, because a lot of times I know when I think about my insurance company, I think, oh, they're going to see that my doors are unlocked all day long. And I'm thinking, oh, y'all might penalize me from that. Like, oh, she should have way higher premiums. But for some reason, did not think that you might be like, hey, lock those doors, Stacy. That'd be good for you. So that's kind of an interesting model. And that does get into this idea that historically, when I've talked to insurance firms, they hate the fact that my relationship with them is almost adversarial. Like, I call them up only when, like, my life is just in the toilet and I'm like, give me money. The worst thing has happened to me. And then, historically insurance firms have, but, just in general, it's not a great interaction. So this kind of gives me maybe more warm and fuzzy feelings towards that particular entity in my life. And those 11 interactions, those are not necessarily insurance related. That's just security, right? That's checking your cameras, that's locking your doors, that's all of that sort of thing. Yes?
Yes, and I would say it's not just security, it's protection, right? So I'll try to rephrase the word to, like, it's protection, because if we detect something that doesn't seem right, we can send you a notification through the panel that you might have in your house or through your app, depending how you want to set it up, right? So, and it could be about locking doors or, your thermostat's at a different spot than you normally have it and things like that. So it's two-way communications. So it's not just us bugging Stacy, right? It's Stacy interacting with our Vivint system through the app.
Like, for Vivint, what role is insurance going to play? When I think about Vivint, I think, monitored home security. I don't think anything related to insurance. In fact, I was surprised that y'all had insurance plans available. So where does that go? And is that going to be only offered to your security customers?
I think the answer is unknown. Certainly, I'd like it to be a big part of Vivint and grow it over time. And because I think it enables us to provide a value to our customers that perhaps can't be matched. But it is a journey. Insurance is regulated in every state and District of Columbia. It takes time to roll out product innovation. It's not just like a big bang and it happens. So, and it's also test and learn. You work on a product, put it in the marketplace. You have to let it kind of, season a bit to see, like, is it doing what you want it to do in terms of predicting loss costs and lowering them? So I think, right now we're only really serving our clientele on the Vivint smart home system. We do sell products. Obviously, if you come across Vivint's insurance agency and stuff like that, we will sell a product to a consumer, absolutely, regardless of the Vivint smart home system. But that's our main focus right now is how do we work with our current customer base from the smart home side. But we're going to dabble, to think about how we kind of engage consumers more broadly with regards to protection in a broader sense, not just home security, but I keep using the term like loss costs, or dollars out of your pocket when you have an accident, right? It's or an incident, kind of thing. So we'll see.
Got it. Yes, I was curious how like owning your own devices and being able to build those, how important that is if you're going to rely on it for something like an insurance product.
Yeah, I think having his own devices, you can put capabilities in them that may not exist today. And as I talk to the product development team in their life cycle of development, I get to have these conversations with them like, well, they've got 100 ideas. And I'm like, well, I don't know. But there's an idea. Like I might be able to use that gadget kind of thing. I don't know how, but I might, and what data would it feed that perhaps helps us on the insurance journey? And they start kind of thinking about that next version of cameras and doorbell cameras and outdoor cameras and panels and smoke and CO2 sensors, water sensors, and other things. And I think that's the beauty of being, Vivint with its capabilities, is that you can have that kind of R&D kind of dialogue, and you put a big smile. You can't see my face, but you can put a big smile on my face. Like, this is kind of cool. I don't make it all work, but I think some things are going to work. And we're just hoping to be innovative in that space.
Excellent. All right. Well, Ron, thank you so much for coming on the show this week.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Stacy.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening, and please subscribe.